Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of our new cricket series, The State of Play. This is episode number 4. You can watch the show in video format at youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation and subscribe. And you can download the audio version at all the usual podcasting apps and platforms. We've got many series on A.C.E Podcast Nation, from cricket to football, mental health, MMA, boxing, films and TV, and much more. Mental health, pretty much everything you can think of. Top guests, expert analysts, and more. So check out them. All the links are in the description for the social media pages, the YouTube channel, everything which we need to find out what's coming up. And of course, we've got a new social media page set up for this show specifically, which is at @stateofplay_, and you'll find that on Twitter and Instagram. So joining me to talk a bit of the old cricket. First of all, I have my usual co-host, West Indian batsman, Mr. Kieran Powell. How are you, my friend?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. My green screen is stressing me out immensely because I just got like this fuzzy undertone around my head, which looks a bit weird, but it's all right. I wish I was where either one of you two were, because it looks miserable as I look outside my window, and I'm assuming it's probably not miserable weather-wise where you two are. But no, we're all good. So you're in quarantine currently because of the CPL. A week of spending not leaving your room.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's. I think it's just after 4 a.m, and this is the most noise I've heard in a long time with some birds outside just chirping away. I think by the end of the week, it's either be crazy or be Buddha. So
yeah,
we'll see how it works out.
So there we go. Look, it's 9 o'clock. Just gone 9 o'clock in the morning for me. It's 4 o'clock in the morning for you. And joining us, another top guest from the world of cricket, former England and Surrey captain, Queensland assistant coach, Mr. Adam Hollioake. How's it going, Mr. Hollioake?
How you going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
You all right, buddy? So what is it there? 6:15 in the evening for you, is it?
Yeah, something like that. 6:15 in the evening, mate. End of a long day.
Yeah. So all good. Obviously, Adam, you did one of my other series, which is My Story, recently. So I'm going to try not to ask you the same sort of stuff. Try and vary it up so you're not talking about the same subjects over and over again. But I am going to put you through the Magnificent Seven again, but it's going to be more purely cricket based. So it's just the same as before, but quick fire questions. Just say the first thing which comes to mind. So the Magnificent Seven for Adam Hollioake, Part 2. Curtly Ambrose or Malcolm Marshall?
That's so hard. I was so scared of Ambrose, but I've watched some video clips and I'm going to go Malcolm Marshall.
Okay. Jack Russell or Matt Pryor?
Jack Russell. He's my boy. He was my roommate, so I've got to go with my roomie.
There we go. Jimmy Anderson or Stuart Broad?
These questions are hard. Jimmy Anderson, I want to go.
Greatest English bowler of all time?
Oh, it's going to be one of those two, isn't it? That's a trick. That's like a double. You just told me you're not going to double up. That's doubling up. It's going to be whoever ends up with the most wickets out of those two. That's like tough.
Yeah,
so I think I'm going to say one of those two.
Okay. Favourite grounds to play at?
It's got to be home. No place like home. The Oval. You want another one, or you want just my favourite one?
No, that's fine. That's good. Best roommate. I think you already answered that one, didn't you?
No, he's just a roommate. He was the worst roommate. He set his hat on fire. He set his hat on fire when I roomed with him. You know that little hat that he used to wear. He tried to dry it out in the microwave, and he set it on the oven, and he forgot about it and set it on fire.
Jesus.
So, he wasn't a good roommate. He was a horrible roommate. Best roommate, Mark Butcher. Played the guitar, funny guy. Always keep you entertained.
He's really doing well with his music at the moment as well. I've seen he's released like a couple of singles and stuff. All over it. And finally, the laziest trainer you've ever played with?
Jeez, I think that's my brother. My brother, he was a horrible trainer. Lucky he was so good, because I was my whole time as captain, and England was trying to get him to do something, because he was just natural. He went out and played. Jimmy Ormond, he was lazy too. So those two guys used to hang out together a lot as well, rub off on one another. Yeah.
So, like with Ben, do you reckon because you were his brother, he was more inclined to kind of not want to train just to annoy you as well? Or do you think he just didn't like training?
Nah, he was just lazy. He was just talented. And I think what happened is, and he played for England, like, how was he, 18 or whatever he was?
Very young.
It's so easy. He didn't have to do anything to get there. So then in the back of his mind that was the standard. You get to play for your country without actually ever practicing, then from then on you think you don't have to do it, don't you? So my whole life was trying to tell him that's not always that easy. Things aren't going to be that easy all the time.
So obviously, you, like I mentioned just now, you appeared recently on My Story. So I don't want to really repeat too much stuff. So at this point, usually we ask the guests to kind of take us back to the start and their upbringing and stuff. But you kind of did that with My Story as we went through your career. So if you could just tell us for the cricket listeners, kind of how you got your start into professional cricket, how it came about, and sort of how did you break through into the seconds and the first team in Surrey?
Well, actually, there's a guy who was the captain of Surrey, was a guy called Ian Gregg, who not that many people know. He's a good cricketer. He was the brother of Tony Gregg.
Okay.
But he was the captain of Surrey, and I was mainly a rugby player. I played cricket as well, but I love both sports equally, so I didn't necessarily have a preference for either. And then one day they said that Ian Gregg wanted to come down and see me, and I was like, I didn't even know who he was. Then he came down, and he started telling me all the stories about Surrey. I knew some of the Surrey players, and then he offered me a contract. But I was only like 16 at the time. I didn't even know what a contract was. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I've got to speak to my mum and dad first, so before I sign it. So that's sort of how I got my start. I got offered the contract like that, and then I was hating studying, and I was on £5 pocket money a week from mum and dad, so it was like the option to go and get paid to play cricket or carry on studying, getting paid £5 an hour. Once I actually had it explained to me, I was like, yeah, I think I'll do the cricket one. Mm-hmm. So that's how I ended up doing that.
Were your parents, they enthusiastic for you to do it and pursue that?
No, not really, because they were pretty keen on me getting a good education, and they wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. That's what they mainly wanted me to be. There's only one problem with that, was I didn't have very good grades. So it was like, you can't be a doctor or a lawyer if you're failing all your subjects. So they were always pushing me to carry on studying and go to university, but my heart wasn't in that at all.
Cool. So what we like to do now is, before we kind of ask you some questions about your career and stuff, is we just talk about some of the stories of the last week or so. Kieran, obviously, the West Indies and England series wrapped up after a very good first test for the West Indians. It kind of went wrong progressively through the series. What were your kind of overall thoughts of the series, and how did you think West Indies did overall?
I don't think that the West Indies necessarily planned they cricket too well in that series. Obviously, it showed on the field, but I think Jason Holder put out something, I think yesterday or the day before, saying that they were mentally fatigued about being in the bubble and what's not. It clearly showed on the field. Those are some mentally fatigued decisions in terms of the team selections and what's not. I mean, you knew Shannon Gabriel, for example, wasn't in the original 15-man squad going to England. He'd just come off of surgery, hadn't played cricket for almost a year. You can't play 3 test matches back to back with just 3 days rest. I mean, those are simple things. I don't think that they necessarily picked a squad that they had confidence in as well, because you'd question why they'd be so reluctant to make changes, and why would you go to England with 3 fast bowlers on the bench and 1 batsman? So obviously you're not expecting any of your batsmen to fail. I think we all know in life and in sport, someone's gonna fail, so you have to have other options, you know. And I just think that England planned it better. The West Indies, as the series went on, England got used to the West Indies batting. The West Indies played, I guess, one brand of cricket right through, and England adjusted. And it's not about the first punch, but it's about how you adjust and continue to improve from there. So I think England did that and ultimately came out victorious in the series. And special congrats to I think Stuart Broad, because the way that he came into that series after the first test match, he got 16 wickets in 2 tests. That's phenomenal. And to jump all the way up to number 3 in the world as well. So he really made a statement to the England management that it doesn't matter how many resources you have, you don't leave out a guy with, well, now 500 test wickets. He has them for a reason. So
yeah, he was angry, wasn't he, about being dropped. He was not happy, Bunny. I saw actually something, I think a couple of days ago, where he said that he considered retiring when he had found out he'd been admitted from that first test squad. I'm not sure if I'm buying that, but he was certainly angry, Adam, and it made for 2 very good performances from Stuart Broad in the second and third test.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing when he said that, he's probably emotional. We all make poor decisions or make poor comments when we're emotional. And he's obviously a proud guy. So he's, you know, I'm not just saying this now. I don't understand how you could even consider leaving or Jimmy Anderson or Stuart Broad out of a home test series, unless, I mean, fitness issues aside, if they're both fit at this period in time, they've got 1,100 wickets, whatever, between them.
Yeah.
1,000 wickets. It's hard to replace that. So I'm a bit baffled by that decision. I know you've got to be progressive and you've got to look forward, but I think it was Dean Headley, he's one of my close friends from back in the day. He was very vocal about it at the time. He said, you just pick your best players, proven players. If you've got a guy who's got 500 test wickets and he's proven, even if he's out of form, that's better than trying to bring somebody else in, because 3 test match series, they'll come good during that series. So, and experience, even if they haven't bowled well going into that game, they'll find a way because they're just proven wicket takers. So that was a really curious decision. And I know what they're trying. England, they're trying to be progressive. They're saying he's not in form and they're trying to move forward, but a very odd decision. And then the way he bounced back, that's how you do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like the way he spoke. He said he didn't badmouth anybody. He just spoke honestly, and I think players are entitled to do that. Speak of their disappointment, and he spoke honestly, and then he just bounced back and let his actions do the talking. So it was almost the perfect reply to what was a poor decision to leave him out.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think we'd all rather hear players in interviews give honest opinions than kind of just trot out. If he had come out and just said, squad rotation, chucked a few cliches in there, I'm not really interested in that interview. Whereas hearing him honestly say how disappointed he was about being dropped, that's good, because it means he's still bang up for it and he still really cares whether he's starting those test matches. So I'd much rather that. I also think people forget that there's a good few years between Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad in age. I think sometimes they kind of get lumped in together as being, they're coming to the end of their career. But Stuart Broad is, I think, 3 years younger, maybe 2 years younger than Jimmy Anderson. Kieran, do you think, I can understand England wanting to start blooding some other pace bowlers. You have got to look to the future. Jimmy Anderson's had some fitness issues, so they have to think about when he's not going to be able to play. They have to think about if he can play every single game. Is he just more suited to bowling in the home series or whatnot? But there's still a few years left in Stuart Broad, do you think?
I think, because they're such a strong pair, people obviously think that they have to be around the same age. Having said that, Stuart Broad has got a lot of miles on his legs for a fast bowler. He has played 140-something test matches, but he seems to be relatively fit, and obviously he's very motivated. We've seen, once you put him under pressure, what he does. I think for me, though, the more baffling thing about it all is that he was a leading wicket taker in the 2 previous series that he played for England as well. So he didn't show any signs of lack of form or anything. It was just a strange call from the England management altogether. But I think that Anderson and Broad, as a pair, they should be playing. I mean, you don't get 1,100 wickets between you. And it's just the pressure that they create as a pair because they know how to bowl together. Obviously, as they said, they're trying to blood other people and contingency plans for when they retire. But they're not going to retire at the same time. And guys will learn from watching them. Guys will learn from playing the odd test match with them. One's going to retire before the other. So you'll have ample opportunity to continue to blood new players. And you do have guys with experience. Chris Wokes now has 30-something test matches. Jofra Archers, the Mark Woods, the Sam Currans, they're all playing here and there. So they're all learning and they're all in the same group of fast bowlers. So I think maybe they have too many resources at the moment and they're just trying to utilize all of them as opposed to just letting nature take its course.
Yeah, 100%. Adam, you mentioned just now about picking your best team. And obviously, Kieran, we've spoken on previous episodes about the West Indian selectors maybe not picking the best squad available to them, including yourself. Who's kind of stood out for you and who may be looking over their shoulder from both sides during the test series? Keith?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of obviously Stuart Broad would be pretty happy with his performance, 16 wickets in the 2 test matches, in the last 2 tests. So, that's a fantastic performance. Ben Stokes was good throughout the series again. I really like Ollie Pope. The young guy's come in and I think he averages 60 in first class cricket. And he got a 90 in that last test match. So I really like to see him get an extended run in the side. And it's a funny because the England batting lineup I have to give it to the selectors. They've tried to give guys a good shot at it. It's not like back in the 90s where it's one test. If you don't get any runs, then you're out. They've given these guys, giving them a good chance to have a go at it. So I'm happy with the fact they're not just chopping and changing after each test, but off the bat, I think they've got big things planned for Ollie Pope. Rory Burns looks like he's cementing himself at the top of the order there. Obviously, they've got world-class players in Joe Root and Ben Stokes. So 6 months in international cricket is a long time, and I can see this England batting lineup starting to take shape, albeit you do look at it and think, but it's only a couple of spots that are up for grabs, really. So that's starting to take shape. And like Kieran mentioned before, the depth of their bowling is, it's probably one of the better countries in the world for depth of quick bowling. We haven't even mentioned Ben Stokes' bowling, but we Stuart Broad, James Anderson, Wokes, Wood, and then you chuck in Ben Stokes. He's actually one of the hardest guys out of all of them to face. So I coach Marnus Labuschagne out here, and he's the bowler he always talks about being difficult because he swings the ball from away from over the top of his head, which makes him quite hard to line up, according to Marnus. So, and he gets a lot of important wickets as well. So England side really starting to take shape without being a well-oiled unit. I think it's sort of like that England side that started to build up leading into that 2005 side. I felt like the momentum was building towards quite a good unit.
Yeah, we had on the last episode, we had Simon Jones on talking about that series and the kind of momentum shift coming into the series, and then the first test, and the way the England squad kind of grew in confidence, and the Aussie squad maybe suddenly realised that it wasn't going to be quite as easy as what they'd maybe become accustomed to. And I think even the England batting lineup is pretty deep. Like you mentioned that maybe there's one or two places up for grabs, but those places could easily be shored up by the people in them at the moment. Like Joss Butler gets a lot of criticism because he tends to either fail or get runs. There's no in between. But I think that's a lot down to the way he plays. But that's also the way that everybody wants him to play, because whenever he does try and adapt his game to play a more traditional Test cricket style, people moan that he's not playing his natural game, and they want to see him, be aggressive. And for me, I've always said I think he should be what Adam Gilchrist was for Australia. You want him coming in at 6 or 7, and either he can change a game in 45 minutes and take the game completely away from the opposition. Kieran, before we move on to Ben Stokes bowling, I was wondering who stood out for you, and kind of who do you think maybe is looking over their shoulder on the West Indian side of things?
Well, I think that most of the batsmen are looking over their shoulder at the moment. Obviously, we got progressively worse as the series went on. I think that they take solace in probably Shamar Brooks and Jermaine Blackwood. Yeah, probably a few half centuries between them. Craig Brathwaite getting a few scores as well, but everyone else pretty much had a very dismal tour. The bowlers, I think, have been doing a fantastic job for the past few years, actually. I think all three of the main fast bowlers that the West Indies use are in the top 20 in the world. So I think that says it all for what type of unit the West Indies have put together quietly. I think that obviously they need to play Alzari Joseph a bit more and give him a defined role. I think that he didn't have really a clear role in that series. And also, I think they just tried to cram Rakeem Cornwall into the last Test match without, again, having any specific plan of how they're going to use him. Because if you're going to drop a seaman per spinner, I don't think that you should be opting to bowl first after having won the toss. You want to bring the spinner into play. So, just, I guess, more so than anything, the tactical decisions that the West Indies makes need to be improved.
Yeah, I think actually that's the one thing England lack as well is a top class spinner. There's a couple of young guys on the county circuit, but they seem reluctant to blood them. They kind of stick with the tried and tested, your Jack Leaches or your Dominic Bess, people who they trust to be quite economical. Like as a fan, I'd like to see them give maybe some. I know there's a couple of young leg spinners doing pretty well on the county scene, but I think they got their fingers burnt with Adil Rashid being quite expensive for the Test side. And I think historically, Adam, I don't know if you'd agree, but whenever England have brought in a leg spinner, they do tend to be quite expensive. For like Ian Salisbury came in all them years ago, and he was quite expensive, even though he had his moments. Do you think that's like a kind of cultural thing, or do you just think, and the pitches are not necessarily great for leg spinners on the county scene, or do you think it's just England haven't got that top quality leg spinner out there?
Well, I honestly think it comes back to the balls that we use. We use Duke balls in England. They're not that easy to bowl leg spin with. They're a lot harder. They travel off the bat a lot better, and I know the leg spinners prefer the kookaburra. It's a bit softer, seams not quite as big, so it feels better in their hand. That's why I think Australia produced so many leg spinners, and the conditions in England, they really do suit that bowlers who run up and bowl 135, between 130 and 145, and there's no need to run in and bowl as fast as you can, and just get the ball in the right area and let the ball do the rest. We all evolve to our conditions, do you know what I mean? So you come out to Australia, and if you run up and bowl 130 on a good line of length with a kookaburra ball, you're going to be fielding for a long time. You've got to try and do something. So I really like what they're doing out here in Australia. I really like it's a new thing that came out a couple of years ago, and I think I would say that's one of the reasons why Australia was successful in England last year. But they played the second half of the season with a Duke ball, which I think is a really progressive way of thinking, because I don't know, is it since 2005? It's been going back and forward, Australia win in Australia, and then they go to England and they get beaten in England. So they don't play the spinning ball very well, swinging ball very well. So I think that was a really good move. But coming back to your question about spin, we cricketers, we evolve to our conditions. I know Jermaine will back me up on this. Back out in the West Indies, their wickets are really tired, and it's not necessarily conducive to guys wanting to run up and bowl fast. And I think that's probably why we haven't quite seen that amazing period of West Indian cricket that when they dominated for 20 years between in the 70s, 80s and 90s. So we're cricketers. We do evolve to our conditions. And I'm not really providing any answers here. I'm just providing an excuse. But I think that's one of the reasons why leg spinners aren't given the chance to perform in England. So if you've got some county bowlers and run up a ball 130 and bowl the ball in the air and do a bit with it, they're bowling tight and they're giving you a chance of getting wickets. But then when your leggy comes on, it's harder to hold the ball, and if they don't get it right, then they're off. They're off. So we bring out another 130 bowler who bowls, just puts it in the area. Whereas in Australia, you've either got someone who has to run up and bowl 140 plus, or bowl wrist spin. Otherwise, you're going to be fielding all day in the heat. So you're encouraged to try and do that. So that's the reason why I think we don't have great finger spinners. And off the back of that, if you do play a spinner, you're saying, I want that spinner to perform within the unit of the team that you've picked. So if you've got 3 or 4 seamers, you don't necessarily want a guy who's going to run up and get a couple out but go for 4 or 5 and over. You just want a guy who can keep it tight.
Yeah.
So you give those guys a little bit of a break. So it's a very different role, and I think all those things combined add up to why they probably go back to your Dominic Besses or your
Jack Leach, yeah.
Jack Leach, yeah. That's why I think they go back to those guys. It's just safe and it fits into the unit rather than Jack Leach and Dom Bess. They're not going to be chasing down Muralitharan or Warren's wicket-taking record, but they're going to provide good respite, good period of rest for the quick bowlers who are the dangers in England to get some rest and come back and do the damage.
Yeah, I can see that 100%. Okay, so Kieran, the England-Pakistan Test series starts, when is it? On the 5th, so tomorrow. What are you expecting from that series? Do you think it's going to be quite a close series, or do you expect one side to prevail?
I think this is going to be an interesting series. Pakistan has always produced good fast bowlers over the years, and I think they've got a good bunch there again. I think the deciding factor is again going to be down to the batting of both teams. I think Pakistan's senior players like Azhar Ali, Babar Azam, who's very exciting to watch, Asad Shafiq, those guys will have to play a big role in any success, I guess, that Pakistan will have. Obviously, Ben Stokes will have to dust off that Superman cape that he found a few years ago from somewhere and continue to be England's best batsman at the moment. I do like the change that England made in the last match, because I do think that Joe Root should stay at number 3 and Ben Stokes at number 4. I think it gives England a better platform, as opposed to having people like Zach Crawley batting at number 3. I think you want those guys coming in and meeting an established player at the crease, a senior player that's already set, already dictating the pace of the game. Obviously, I know it's something that that Joe Root has alluded to, that he doesn't necessarily like batting at number 3. But I think for this England team to really go forward, he has to put his hand up and say, okay, this is the time for him to take that opportunity. Obviously, he's going to have a few more failures as the ball's going to do a bit more, but the rewards are going to be a lot bigger for him as a person and as a team if he could pull it off batting at number 3 and allow Ben Stokes to bat at number 4. And I think Ollie Pope, as Adam had said, he obviously looks like a good young player. Gets lots of runs in county cricket, and he's looked the part in Test cricket so far. So I think that's a good batting lineup, and then just unleash Josh Butler. You can't like it when he gets off, but then ridicule him when he gets out. It's either you like it or you don't like it. Yeah. That's why everyone loved Virender Sehwag, because he was literally just a shot of ball, and some days he'd get out for 5. Another day he'd make 290 in one day in Test cricket. So yeah, it is what it is. You have to love it all the way or not like it at all. That's how I think
you want Josh Butler coming in when you're kind of 400 for 6 or whatever, 400 for 5, so he can just come in and play his usual game. You don't want him coming in 180 for 5, 180 for 6, where he's got to try and save the innings because he can't play his natural game then.
I think you actually want him at 180 for 5. I think that's the reason why he should be in the team, because then he could play a counter-attacking innings, take the momentum back from the opposition, get you up to a 350 when you're looking at 230, and really bring that confidence back to the team. I think that's how they should look at it. Just allow him to go out and play. Obviously, he's going to fail. We all fail anyway, so just let him be free. There's no point in having Josh Butler just coming out trying to save face and blocking when he could get a quick 80, 120, and change the course of a game.
Yeah, and I suppose that could be quite demoralising for the other team as well, isn't it? If they think they're kind of getting through the England batting lineup and then Josh Butler comes in and scores a quick 100 or whatever, it can take the game away from them. Adam, it looks like, Ben Stokes has been bowling again in the nets after having a couple of games of no bowling, which means Zach Crawley will probably come back into the lineup. Is Stokes, you mentioned Stokes bowling earlier, do you think he's vital to England's bowling attack in terms of balance and that extra? He's very much their strike bowler and their go-to bowler when they need something to happen.
He's their strike cricketer when they need something to happen. Whether it's the bat or the ball or in the field, he's always he seems to be amongst it. He's just, what I like is he's in an era where, hey, I'm not trying to do myself out of a job here. I'm a cricket coach, but we are guilty of overcoaching people, young players these days, and sort of our responsibility and our job to try and allow natural talent to flourish. We're often guilty of trying to cookie cut and make everybody play the same. I remember I was asked, it would have been 15 years ago, by David Gilbert, who was an old coach of mine at Surrey, to have a look at the New South Wales bowlers. They all had the same load up as Brett Lee. They all had they were the similar sort of height, all about the same height. They even had the same haircut. It was like, I was like, after about half an hour, I said to him, "Mate, I can't help you." He said, "Why?" I said, "I can't even know which one's which. They've all got the same action." I said, "They're beautiful bowlers." I said, "But if you get in against these guys, they're all the same. They're all the same." So what I like about Ben Stokes and the England bowling attack is that you got Anderson, swinging the ball both ways. You got Broad hitting the wicket and wobble seaming, and then you got Stokes coming over the top of his head but still swinging it out from there. It's very hard to line up. So I think that attack, albeit they're all right arm seamers, they're three very different propositions to play against. So he just is that little bit different. And like I mentioned before, Marnus, all he talks about is Stokesy and how he finds him hard to line up. So I think he's and also obviously quite a good batsman, isn't he?
Yeah,
and quite a good fielder. So it's nice to have your all-rounder as someone who's just a bit different from the rest. It sort of takes us back to our Ian Botham's, back in the day. It was just that little bit different, that little bit of X factor, and I think he's crucial to the attack.
Yeah, I think he's all round crucial to the team. Kieran, Jonathan Trott was named as a batting consultant for England for the Pakistan series. What do you think of that decision? And what sort of things will a batting consultant offer? That's what I would like to know.
I think Trott's main strength was his focus, I guess. So I guess this young test team, they've been doing a lot of talking about getting back to traditional test cricket. I think that's where we've seen Sibley and Burns being reintroduced into test cricket as opposed to more attacking type openers. So I think he'll really help in the way that they approach the game mentally. What use is batting coaches or batting consultants? As Adam said, I mean, it could be good for someone who likes to be overcoached. For a player that likes to figure it out, it's just, I guess, a sounding board more so than anything. Ultimately, all players need at this level is just a little bit of air in the tires and hitting enough balls to make them feel as though that they've prepared well enough. That's what international cricket is about, just making players feel good and preparing them as well as they could and then allowing them to go out and express themselves.
Yeah, I think.
Go on, Adam. If I can interfere there, just, interrupt rather than interfere. Hopefully, it's interesting that we all watch Hollywood movies and we have this view of the coach as someone who's going to come in and say some Churchillian type speech, which is going to all of a sudden take a guy from being a club cricketer into the best batsman in the world. That's the movies. That's not reality. And what Kieran's saying is absolutely right. I think it's about volume for the batsman, getting enough balls, feeling good about themselves, and a sounding board, just someone that they can bounce some ideas off. And one thing which I think people forget, and this is something which I have to remind myself of when I'm coaching, is cricketers are better these days than they were 10 years ago. And then they're better 10 years ago than they were the 10 years before. They keep getting better. So if I'm coaching a Marnus Labuschagne or a Joe Burns or any current player now, they're better than I was. So it's very important that the coach remembers it's a collaboration and we're not sitting here telling someone how to play the game, because the fact is they're bigger, faster, stronger now than with better techniques, better bats, everything's better. I can't be Usain Bolt's running the 100 meters a second faster than Jesse Owens did back. Jesse Owens was the greatest runner in the world back in 1952. Everything's got faster except for cricket's the only thing which has got worse, apparently. So we are, as coaches, we've got to collaborate with the player and act as a sounding board, and they'll try and allow the player to solve the problem himself, because he's out there and they're capable of doing that. So I think that Jonathan Trott's, he's a wonderful player and everything like that, but I think it's more fitting into the group than it is coming in, and he's not going to be able to say some magic sentence which is going to turn Dominic Sibley from Dominic Sibley into Dominic Bradman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I've got to say on that.
Yeah, Jonathan Trott was a exceptional batsman. His ability to concentrate for long periods was right up there with the best batsman, at the time. If he can, if that sort of long-term thinking in terms of building an innings can rub off, particularly on the likes of Dominic Sibley and Bob and Burns, I think that can only be a good thing. I thought actually Sibley and Burns did very well in this West Indian Test series. I thought they looked settled and they looked like they felt comfortable opening the batting for England, which is a good thing. Just before we move on, and I'm going to ask you both a few questions, ask Adam some questions about his career to finish off. I wanted to ask you about the Irish games, the one-day games between Ireland. Ireland have obviously come, a real long way in the last few years compared to where they were. They started playing, Test cricket and the like. They're not. I still think they're not quite there in terms of competing with the very top sides, but I think there was enough there to be encouraged by that. I think, how can I say it without sounding like a hot dick? I think there's enough there watching Ireland that you can see that they're building something. They're getting better all the time in all aspects. They're bowling, the fielding, the batting, but they're not quite there with the very, very top teams. And when you consider that there's a lot of English players missing from this squad because they've had to separate the two teams completely because of the COVID. Kieran, what do you feel about how Ireland are progressing as a cricketing nation?
Yeah, well, it's always going to be difficult. They've been playing cricket, but just being a full member international team brings its own challenges. Obviously, they've got to develop infrastructure, they've got to develop talent pools, and these things take time. Obviously, you look at places like Sri Lanka that came in and won the '96 World Cup. You look at, I guess, more recent countries like Afghanistan and how they're progressing. It's just down to, I guess, well, anywhere in Asia, they're going to have more people. So they're going to have access to faster development because we know how cricket mad they are out there. But I think Ireland just has to, I guess, develop their own infrastructure because, you can't necessarily depend on the British system anymore of bringing through players through county systems and what's not. They've always been a hard-working team. It's never been a team that's going to blow you away in terms of its talent. But I think over time they'll get to a point where they'll be satisfied and they'll be competitive.
Yeah, obviously previously, every time Ireland had a particularly good player, England would borrow him, should we say. That's happened a few times over the years.
Well, I think England's famous for borrowing players from a few countries.
Well, yeah.
Hey, come on.
But what do you think, Adam, about just about how Ireland are progressing? There's a clear improvement from a few years ago where they were just getting, if you had done a one-day game between England and Ireland, 5 years ago, it would have been bordering on not embarrassing, but it would have been very one-sided.
I don't know. It's you're right. They've come on a long way, and they have got a long way to go. But we actually went up and played them in my last year of professional cricket, 2004. Not even sure Kieran was born then, but we went up there, and it was back in the days when you were told, we were all out drinking. So we were just told, the one thing we were told before we went there was just don't go out drinking with the Irish, just because they were drinking. And the West Indies went there in 1966, and they got bowled out for 32. So it was, I think they had Garfield Sobers and the three W's all went out and enjoyed Irish hospitality and got bowled out for 30 and lost. So we were told same thing. Just when you go there, you just don't socialise with them because they're too good at it. And we didn't take the coach's advice, and we got beaten as well. But I mean, obviously these guys are far more professional now, and they're not going to fall for that sort of behaviour. But it's funny, isn't it? Like, you go along as one of these minnows, like Kieran, like really mentioning Sri Lanka there was like really probably the side that springs to mind, because they weren't in the world setup for that long before they won that World Cup. I don't know, how long was it, 10, 15? I don't know, it wasn't that long. So I think all it takes is one or two great players. If you've got Test cricketers, there's a lot of players that fall into that bracket of being very similar. So we'll look back to my era. There was, probably 60, 70 cricketers going around. A lot of us are very similar, but then you had your Warne, your Muralitharans, your McGrath, Ambrose Walsh, your Wasim and Wacker. So you had like 10 guys who stood out as bowlers, and then probably the same thing with bowl, and the rest were very similar. So I just think that if Ireland can find one or two big players, or they develop, and then they get a mastery of their own conditions, then they can start making progress. But it's going to be hard. Kieran makes a really good point that they don't have the volume of people that they do in Asia. Like I was out in Afghanistan 3 or 4 years ago for the Afghan Premier League, and
that's my next question. Literally, I was going to ask you about that. Your trip to Afghanistan.
Yeah, and you go there and you go, these guys will be in the top 5 in the world within 20 years because they're mad about it. They don't have other sports. They don't have rugby. So they play cricket. That's what they play, and they're big athletic guys as well, the Afghans. You know what I mean? So they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. They've got a lot of things. Ireland, I don't know if they've got a lot of other sports they play, haven't they? They play soccer.
Yeah, sure.
They've got Gaelic football. What's that game they play with the stick?
Hurling. Is it hurling?
Hurling. They've got their drinking games. They've got all sorts of games there to compete with. So I think it's going to be harder for them. But if they can find one or two world-class bowlers, then they can start building a side that can start becoming more challenging. But it's going to be hard for them.
Yeah, I think so.
And Afghanistan, wow, what a place. I went there. We were promised security, and the thing which got me there was the passion of the people. You could feel that they want cricket there so badly, and I was speaking to a lot of their board members and people high up in their game, and you could feel that enthusiasm coming through, and they guaranteed me safety. The security I had out there was outstanding. But they did try and kill me. They tried to blow. Yeah. A bomb went off, and the 9 of our security guards were killed, and it was scary. But there's the passion for the game which really stood out for me, and the fact they're big athletic guys. So I think they can be a real danger in world cricket in a short period of time. I can honestly see them being very successful.
They've come a real long way already, really quickly, haven't they? When you think since they've sort of joined the cricketing world, and then they've already now are competing. So you, like you say, a few more years, you'd expect them to be right up there. Just on that, where you went out there in 2017, was it a T20 tournament, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, T20.
And
yeah.
There was a suicide bombing where people obviously was sadly killed. Was you chose to stay out there following that? Was that a difficult decision for you to choose to stay out there? Because I know some people came home.
Yeah, it was a difficult decision. I was taken aback by the passion, and I could see in their eyes when I spoke to them that these people were devastated. They'd worked so hard to get us out there, and they'd guaranteed me safety. Now the bomb went off, but they did their job. Security kept. There was 3 layers of security which this bomber had to get through, and they got him at the first checkpoint. Yeah, okay. It was scary. I mean, literally, the bomb went off, and I could feel the vibrations through my body. So it was probably one of the scariest moments of my life. But they then promised that they would up the security and keep people back 2 kilometers from the ground, and they kept their word with everything else they did. So I was happy. My dad, when I was young, he said to me, always stay till the job's done. So that was one time where I did want to go against his advice and just go home. But once I was satisfied that we were going to be looked after, then I decided I would stay and get that job done.
Were you close to going, do you think? Or were you kind of...
Yeah, of course.
Definitely.
If you'd asked, the bomb went off at I'm going to say 5 o'clock at night, around that sort of getting towards dusk. And there was a flight out of there at 10 p.m. that night, and a lot of people were on that flight. If I'd made a decision that night, I would have been on that flight because I was scared and I was emotional. So, but I said to myself, no, I'll sleep overnight. I'll hear what they've got to say. I'll think about it. We were safe in the hotel, so there was no urgency for a decision. It was just the urgency was we'll go back to the ground.
Of course.
So I thought about it overnight and spoke to my father and a few other people who I respect, and that was the decision I came to. But yeah, I was definitely close to going home.
For sure. Adam, are you all right for another sort of 5 or 10 minutes just to ask you a couple of questions? Yeah, you cool?
Yeah, sure.
Because there's one story which I think if I didn't ask you about it, everyone would be very upset. It's vital to the people's cricketing knowledge. Is it true that you were robbed by a granny over Gumtree?
It's true. And I can see Kieran laugh. Don't start judging me just because you're over in the West Indies, mate. I know you guys are all gangsters over there, but it's embarrassing, but it's true. I was moving house, and I had a whole bunch of items in my house that I needed to get rid of. So I advertised them on Gumtree, and this little old lady came around, and she seemed so sweet and so innocent. And she came around and she was looking at this. I had this cabinet, and it wasn't much. It was $50, $100, can't remember, not a lot of money. But she said to me, "Oh, could you give us a hand taking it to my car?" So I said, "Of course," So I carried it out there, and I laid her seats down, and then put a towel down, made sure it was all nice and so it didn't scratch her car. I put the cabinet in, and she said, "Oh, love, I'm just going to go into the car and get some cash out of the glove box." And then I'm standing there at the back and waiting. And then I thought, well, that's interesting. Why is she starting the car up to get the money? And the next thing, she started driving. I thought, oh, she must be going to turn the car around. She just drove off. So the thing is,
Madness.
you'd be thinking, I'd be angry, wouldn't you? You'd be thinking, what emotion? Angry, like frustrated, whatever. I was just standing there, and I was like looking around. I was embarrassed because all my neighbours were there. I was just embarrassed. I said, "Did they see that? I've just been robbed. I've been rolled by a 90-year-old lady."
Jeez.
My gangster status gone straight away.
Can't trust anyone. Can't trust anyone. Not even the grannies. Not even the
They're
grannies.
even out for me, mate. They're out for me.
Excellent.
Where did this happen? In the UK?
No, in my house in Australia. It's like,
Jesus.
and I lived in like a really nice house. It was like, she just came and robbed me at my own house. It's like, so mean. She was so mean. It's like, I'd help her carry it to the car. She's like the meanest granny in the world.
Takes some guts, though, doesn't it, to go to someone's house, get them to load up your car, and then just drive off.
Yeah.
No shame.
I helped her steal from me. It was like, it's embarrassing. It's like,
I love that. That's incredible. So,
and then that hasn't helped people like yourself. Every time I go, people bring it up. I've got to relive it. Every time.
It's just distressing and all over again. Okay. So I've asked Kieran this a couple of times. I can ask you, Adam. What's some of the worst or funniest sledges that you have given or been on the end of?
Oh, funnily enough, I'll go back to that Irish game. I think the best sledge that I've ever had was from one of the Irish players. I think we got about 220 in that game, and it got to the point where they were about 200 for 5, and with plenty of overs left. But Sacklane Mushtaq was bowling, and there was this little window. In any game, there's a window where you think, if we could just get a couple of wickets here, we could put them under a lot of pressure. So this guy came out to bat, a little Irish guy. I think he hadn't played many games, and he looked nervous. We came out, and there wasn't a big crowd. There was 5,000 people or what have you, but I was fielding in close, so I decided I was going to start trying to rattle him. So he came out, and you know when you're trying to sledge someone, you start talking to them, and if they answer back, you're like, yeah, well, I've got him here. He's talking back. So I asked him, I said, hey, how many games have you played for Ireland? He said, I've played 20. So I said, how many games have you won for your country? And he said, not many. And I said, big crowd in today, 5,000. I said, there'll be another 1 million people watching on TV. And so all the while, I was trying to build the situation up to try and put a bit of pressure on it. And I said, you wouldn't want to choke out here in front of all those people on TV. He says, I don't care. I get heaps of shags. So he totally diffused me. And you know someone's got you good when your own team's laughing at you. Then, I was like, okay, I had to like pay that. Yeah, he got me there.
Excellent. I like that. What? Okay, Kieran, what's the most angriest you've ever been on the cricket field?
Ooh. Probably captain in any team. I wouldn't say that. Bowlers and fielders just make you upset. I think just being captain on its own it gives you a different type of range. It just makes you angry for no reason.
It does. It's like, we're going to die young, mate. We're going to die young because of it. The stress. So stressful.
Yes. What about you, Adam? Is there like a particular match or something which springs to mind where you just the most angriest you've been on the field?
Actually, I've just remembered one. It's a little bit embarrassing, but I talk about it. I don't know if you remember my coach, Keith Medlicott.
Yeah.
He was coach for 7 years. He used to play for a club called Sutton, and I used to play for a club called Send. And it's in the Surrey League, so it was amateur cricket, and it wasn't a particularly high standard. Anyway, my club played against his club, and we had a lot of aggro in that game, but I wasn't bowling. So I said to those guys, hey, I'm going to come back next year when I'm bowling. You're going to know about it. So anyway, that game came around, and there was a big build up to it. We knew there was going to be competition. I would have been 17, 18, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 around there. I was young. Back then, I wasn't particularly nice. I was pretty competitive, and he's a very, I lose my temper very easily. So I came into bowl, and and it was wet. It was wet. So I was trying to bowl as fast as I could. And my foot kept slipping, and I kept on bowling it short, and the batsman kept hitting it for four. And there's no crowd watching. The only people watching were the opposition. So they start, hey! So they're clapping and they're winding me up more and more and more. And the more they're winding me up, the more angry I got. The faster I tried to bowl, the more I slipped, and the further they kept hitting it. So it just went on and on and on till eventually I was completely out of my mind. So I bowled my last ball of the over, and I said, give me the ball. So that my captain and player, they knew at that stage I had a really bad temper. So they're like, no, why? What are you going to do? Give me the ball. So eventually they gave me the ball. So I started walking straight towards the opposition, where all the opposition were sitting. And so as I got closer, I was thinking I was just going to throw the ball into where they were sitting, but thankfully I didn't do that. I started shouting at them, come down, you got so big, why don't you come down here and say something? So one of the guys said, who, me? So I said, no, all of you come down. So I got so angry that all of a sudden I thought I was Superman. I was going to be able to fight the whole team. Anyway, Keith Medlicott was the playing in the opposition side. He was the coach, so he came out, and thankfully he was there because he was the only person I reckon that would have been able to calm me down. He said, "Come on, mate, you completely lost it here. You need to just get back out there and behave yourself, and you don't want to throw your career away on this." So thankfully he calmed me down. But I was wanting to go and fight the whole opposition. It was embarrassing. Where was that anger when the granny stole the stuff from me? Where was it when I needed it? I was like a little pussycat. I just sat there and went,
just let her rob you. Take my stuff.
Let her drive off.
Do you want this as well? Yeah, I'll take this as well.
Might as well come back and get some more stuff.
Oh, hang on. I got my card here. Okay, last couple then. Here's an interesting one then. Who is the best wicketkeeper of all time and why? Kieran, you go first.
Wicketkeeper, that's an interesting one because you've got batsmen that are keepers and then you've got pure, genuine wicket keepers. So which one are you looking for?
I just want your opinion of who you think is, if you had to pick an all-time 11 to play against Adam's all-time 11, who was going to be your wicketkeeper?
I'd probably be unfair and pick Kumar Sangakkara or A.B. de Villiers.
Good shout. What about you, Adam? Who's getting into your all-time 11 as your wicketkeeper?
I'm gonna get the traditionalists are gonna hate me because they're gonna say that I should pick Alan Knott or Jack Russell, but I'm gonna go with Adam Gilchrist. I like a guy who can bat, and I like my wicketkeeper to be able to bat as well. So
Adam Gilchrist was an incredible wicketkeeper as well. People forget that. Yeah. He was real good.
Oh, he was a good wicketkeeper, yeah. But Sangakkara, I mean, he can't get picked twice, so I probably would have had him first as well. But he's probably playing against him by the
No, I think
he got in there first.
They were my choices. Sangakkara and who is the best fielder of all time? Adam, you go first for this one.
I'm gonna sound like such an old
I'll go with mine then first while you quickly have a think. I would go with Mark Ramprakash or Jonty Rhodes. They would be my two.
Mark Ramprakash.
Yeah, he was incredible fielder.
Are you kidding?
Incredible fielder. Maybe not of all time.
That's the worst. That's the worst selection I've ever heard. You're probably one of the selectors that left Stuart Broad out of the first test.
Yeah. I mean, big mates with Duncan
That's a terrible selection. Like, Ramps is one of my close mates, and I played with him for a while, and he's a good fielder. But Jonty Rhodes, you can't put him in there ahead of Jonty Rhodes. Ridiculous.
I told you before, I got a like a bit of a fanboy for Mark Ramprakash. I just like probably.
It's not a dancing competition, mate. It's not a dancing
No, Jonty Rhodes probably for me. He is the.
yeah, I would say Jonty Rhodes. Me.
What you, Key? Who you got?
Just because you've both gone Jonty Rhodes, I think I'll go Herschel Gibbs, A.B. de Villiers.
So what's interesting would be like, would you have gone Jonty Rhodes? Because I'm wondering, like, the modern day player, if
I think so.
you'd still go Jonty.
Yeah,
Still Jonty. Yeah, right.
He was the benchmark, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I mean, I went Jonty because I haven't watched as much cricket these days as what I used to do back in that day. So I wondered, like, if a modern day player would, because I would think fielders are better now, but he was standout in our generation. Apart from Mark, of course.
Apart from Mark Ramprakash, obviously. He taught Jonty Rhodes everything he knows.
Ridiculous. I can't say this.
But the thing is, though, mate, is that these days, I think pretty much all players can field pretty well, can't they? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Back in like when you were at your pomp, there was probably like
there was only Mark that could field back.
Yeah, everyone else was using their boots to stop the ball, wasn't they?
Come on, mate. Oh, you're making it sound like I played in the black and white TV days.
All right, and,
because I was like sledging your selection, you decided to have a go back.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm going to change the questions to much harder ones. No. Who's the last two questions then? Best all-rounder of all time. Kieran, you go first.
Gary Sobers. That's
He's
easy.
stealing my players. He's stealing my players.
Sorry, Mark Ramprakash is still on the table.
I'm going to start calling him Kieran the Granny. Like,
Stealing his stuff.
Or Mark Ramprakash, yeah.
He's best all-rounder, yeah. Check. Who you got that for best all-rounder of all time?
Oh, it's got to be Gary Sobers. Actually, Jack Callis, I know Gary Sobers, there's no one better, but I mean, if we're going to have an honourable mention, Jack Callis is probably the guy who, the opposite to Gary, who was like all flamboyant and didn't slide under the radar. Jack probably didn't quite get the accolades which he was due, and he'd probably be he's got a case to argue he's the best, but I think that Sir Gary's there's only one Sir, isn't there? That's an all-rounder. Oh no, Botham's now Sir too. So
yeah,
but
he's Botham's become a lord now, hasn't he?
I know. That's
Lord
unbelievable.
Incredible.
And apparently Ramps is going to become a lord.
He's next. He's going to be a prince. I'd have Jack Callis because I'm Glamorgan, Cardiff boy, so I'd go with Jack Callis with a bit of bias. Well, I say Jack Callis would be a close second behind Mark Ramprakash. Okay. So after I've given Mark Ramprakash all this praise, Adam, you've got to get him to come on the podcast for us now.
I'll get him on it. I'll get him on it, and even he'll say like, that's
yeah. Okay. Right. I'm completely thrown now. Right, Adam. Thank you for your time. Yeah, that's it. No, I appreciate your time, mate. Thank you very much. And Kieran, as always, thank you, my friend. Guys, subscribe, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. Follow @StateOfPlay_ on Twitter and Instagram. And look out for some clips of the various shows. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with an all-new guest. And which we will announce for sometime in the next week or so. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Cheers, guys. And we'll see you next episode.
That's massive.